Mom, you're in the bedroom?
Yeah, I'm in the bedroom. Choose or die.
The movie begins with a youngster arguing with his mother about a problem they had earlier, but the father did nothing about it and instead walked back to the cave in the house where he plays his game. He was astonished to see the computer giving him instructions, but he followed them nevertheless when the computer turned on and the cursor game started. He was treated with contempt as soon as he was asked, his tongue or her ear. He didn't appear to understand what was happening, but he now had to make a decision or perish. What the hell is going on? Honestly, before he could try to flee, there was a blackout. He exited the cave and returned to the living room, where he was surprised to see that his wife had strangely cut his son's tongue. She said she didn't know what happened, which is understandable because she doesn't. I wager this must be the start of the horrifying catastrophe in this movie. 3 months later, Kayla, a programmer, had just finished work and was getting ready to head home when she decided to meet her friend Isaac, who was working on a game he was planning to develop. As they say, birds of a feather flock together, so it makes sense that Kayla is one of them. When she arrived at his home, she found him working on a game he was creating. They spoke about the project and other topics, and Isaac suggested that Kayla join him as a full-time programmer, but she didn't accept his offer. She offered him a keyboard that she had brought in so that Isaac could use it, but she had to inform him that it needed to be fixed. I don't think she will accept that, even though she had affection for him. During her search for Isaac's home, Kayla comes across Cursor, a vintage PC game from the 1980s that allows players to enter text to advance the plot. As a student who is already drowning in debt and has an eviction notice in the house where she lives with her ill mother, Kayla learned that the game contains a cash reward that has never been claimed. Picture a cash prize of $125,000 for the winner. Anyone would have fallen for it. She then decides to play the game that links Choose or Die to the entertaining subculture of people who look for misplaced video games. Cause unknown. That was a little odd because it changed depending on what was going on in the room. After formally joining the game, Kayla contacted the number listed in the book. She then went home, where she discovered her mother helplessly laying on a bed. She then gave her drugs and tried to make her feel better. She told her not to allow Lance anywhere in her, because he wasn't helping in any way, but instead would add to the issues she already had. But her mother did not regard it, and instead told her about how the rats had infested the wall. Who would have thought that Kayla's mom was allergic to rats? Even in her sick position, she's concerned about the rats. Kayla then assured her that she would set another trap by the next day, but also requested that they both go out for a walk the following day, probably to the park. But who takes a sick patient for a walk? I guess Kayla does. Following the conversation with her mom the previous night, she got up the next day and fixed her keyboard and tested it, probably to see if it would be compatible. Luckily, she was on duty with Camilla, and out of curiosity, she asked Camilla if she had ever wondered why they were doing the job they were doing, which happened to be a cleaning job, even though the place wasn't in use, but they still had to clean it. Surprisingly, Camilla thought that was what they were good for. Honestly, who hires people to clean a building night after night? But for Camilla, as long as she was getting paid, that settled it all. Moreover, Camilla was pregnant while doing this job. In essence, Kayla wouldn't have participated in the game if she had known the rules, but who knows? She may have been distracted by the cash prize, and there is one way to learn what happened to her after that. She was at the restaurant when the first level of the game started at precisely 2:00 a.m. She texted Isaac, saying, "No wonder you're single." What does that have to do with the game that was about to start in a few minutes? One could say that she had feelings for him, but for Isaac, as a programmer who was working hard on his project, there was no time for a relationship. The waitress went back to Kayla and asked if she was going to order something else. If not, she wouldn't be allowed to stay there any longer. Well, she told the waitress to give her a minute. The waitress agreed and showed her the menu for her to pick what she would like. But the computer ended up showing her what was on the menu: coffee or cake. Wow, that was unexpected, but the game had begun. She picked coffee and immediately found the waitress pouring coffee in her cup. She was embarrassed, but the waitress looked surprised as to why Kayla looked anxious. The waitress ended up eating a broken glass after what one might have assumed would be a straightforward assignment. What transpired surprised and alarmed Kayla, but this is only the beginning. Do you believe Kayla was dreaming? Without a doubt, when Kayla woke up from her sleep, she realized what had happened but saw her mother talking to a police officer. After the officer departed, Kayla went to talk to her mother, and they talked about Ricky's tragic death from drowning in a nearby swimming pool. She went outside and told Isaac what had occurred to the waitress during the game, But Isaac was unable to trust what she had said. Who would have thought that playing a video game might result in death? That seems weird, no. But in all honesty, that's what happens when you play games like Cursor. Isaac was upset when Kayla left, but he reassured her that he would explore the matter. When Kayla's mother called her while she was at work mopping the floor, she was startled that she wasn't asleep and informed her that there were rats in the house. Kayla was still reassuring her that she would set another trap when she got home, when she finally realized the next game had already started. The lights turned green, and she was terrified as she realized that wasn't what she had anticipated. By the time the game was completed, Kayla's mother could only escape the rats by jumping out the window, which she did and was later hospitalized for. Kayla had also broken the PC used for the game out of anguish, and her boss had immediately fired her for it, which left her with no job. In Kayla's case, the agony was real and overpowering, but the gain wasn't guaranteed, which makes me think of the proverb, "No pain, no gain." She visited the hospital to see how her mother was doing, but immediately returned home. By the time she arrived home, the house had been completely demolished, just like in the game. So she immediately went back to Isaac, completely soaked and crying. Isaac took her in, and this time they had to play the game in Isaac's home from that point on for him to believe what Kayla told him. But Kayla warned him before getting himself involved. They discussed it while they waited for the game to begin at 2 a.m. Isaac explained to Kayla how he would cheat at the game and how he saw it. It would be expensive. A new version of the Cursor game. The game started when they were engaged in a food fight, and this time it was entirely focused on Isaac. Kayla thought it was a horrible idea and warned Isaac to be careful, because it would damage him, but Isaac seemed to be in disbelief. The game led both Kayla and Isaac through a door, and though they had to pick either the blue or the red door, it was quite unfortunate that the blue door was locked, which left them with the red door. After entering through the door, they got to a quiet room, which happens to be the pool where Kayla's brother had drowned. But by the time the game was through, Kayla had to decide between saving Isaac and Ricky, who was already dead in the Riley Memorial Pool. But the only way she could save Isaac was to kill Ricky. That was tough on her, and would have been tough on anyone. Isaac felt sorry for Kayla when she told him about her experience and what she had to do to survive. As a result, Isaac was determined to unlock a hack mode in the game, which he achieved and discovered where the game was created. Without further ado, the two of them began their journey to discover the essence of the game. I was hoping that it would be simple. So as predicted, they arrived at the location and discovered the building where the game was created. They'd also discovered a TV and a tape. After they both listened to the video and understood the concept, the game started up again and asked Kayla to rewind or fast forward, which, if she did, affected Isaac. Eventually, Isaac died, and Kayla had to defeat the boss, which was the game's final level. If that game had been played in real life rather than in a movie, the authorities would have banned it. When Kayla arrived at the coordinates for the final level, it didn't appear to be empty, so she proceeded through the forest until she eventually arrived at the house. When she arrived at the house, a family was already seated at the dining table. The man at the table, who is named Hal, asked her to join them and inquired about how Kayla had discovered the family. She responded by telling him how she had been sent there. However, when they engaged in combat, Kayla threw herself into the water, and the other man drowned after squeezing water from his mouth and nose, meaning that the injured person never feels agony while the other party does. Hal died and Hal's family saved Kayla. Although the idea behind the game is extremely bizarre, Kayla has now completed the last level and has earned the prize, which happens not to be money, but instead gets control of the game. She now can choose anyone she wants to join the game. She decides to use it on people who deserves it and hurt them. In other words, one more sacrifice so that the other person might be saved. The more the one who is Cursor suffers, the more the one who proves themselves benefits. Lance, who had been relentlessly tormenting them while they had nothing, was eventually sacrificed, and instead Kayla's mother was healed. I really enjoyed it. The acting was really good. It has the feel of an old-school 80s horror film, but also more modern. Also, Robert Englund is a horror icon. The movie definitely had a little bit of a Nightmare on Elm Street feel. I really liked the ending too. I think the movie was well done and well worth the watch. Thanks for watching another Essential Recap. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe.